period of 2 years. After that, I arrived 5 years later. Yes, that is a genuine tale of what they told me before we began the job. It was expected that Celine Dion's son would continue in her footsteps. He was expected to sing by everyone. No one thought he would ever leave the realm of music. But Renee Charles was not on board with that. He came clean about his illicit activities at the age of 24. Over the years, the family maintained silence. Uncertainty gripped his mother. He was imagined the horror on the face of my late father. Renee Charles, however, had grown indifferent to their anxieties. The reason Celine has been so guarded over his private is because of what he confessed this year, which justifies his secrecy. Celine Dion came into this world on March 30th, 1968, in a little hamlet named Charlemagne was close to Montreal. She came from a large family of 14 children. Her mother made the joke that there wasn't even room for another spoon because their house was so packed. With 16 individuals crammed into one space, the activity and din were constants. It was always the same, with no luxuries or peaceful spots. Progress and disseminated all information. Amidst the mayhem, Celine, a little infant, was one of almost 20 mouths to feed. Living in a crowded, noisy, and impoverished area was the norm for her family. She went on to say that they were unaware of their difficulties because they felt everyone else was fine, kept to the same routine. She was greeted with nothing more than an empty crib. Her parents tucked her under a blanket-lined dresser drawer the moment she returned home from the hospital. This was no eccentric choice. They had no other choice. In the absence of surplus funds, no available space for nursery furnishings, around $6,000 was the annual income for the typical Canadian family back then. Contrarily, the Dons had a ridiculously small number of offspring. Limits and tough decisions molded her early life. She developed the door didn't swing open. The tension just increased. Sometimes there would be 3 sisters to a mattress, and Celine would have to share a little bed with all of them. Everyone slept on the floor, on couches, and even in the halls because the house was so crowded. In a subsequent statement, she said crammed together night after night, the females slept like sardines. Squeezing in for a few years, wasn't it? It persisted all the way into her adolescence. Her family seemed like its own little town, even though most Canadian families were experiencing declines. With her, my dad was a butcher, and he put in long hours for low wages. Staying at home, her mum ran the household and made garments out of discarded materials and handmade. Survival, not savings, drove this family. However, one constant remained in the air, despite the many challenges: music. Her parents were both musicians. She inherited a musical name, and her father sang and played the violin. They seemingly hoped, quietly, that their little girl would bring the spirit of a beloved French ballad with her into the world. So they named her Celine. Despite the abundance of affection and background music, while outside circumstances were unforgiving, it was common practice to taunt Celine at school. She stood out from the other youngsters because she was very thin and had large teeth. They disparaged her as a vampire. This was not an occasional case of teasing. Each day was the same. The bullying, Celine stated afterwards, left permanent wounds. She recalled the fear she had upon entering the classroom, fully aware of the challenges that were ahead. Photographs taken of the girl when she was young reveal an introverted, uncertain, and perhaps struggling young woman. Fade away. Things didn't improve when she started performing in front of an audience as a teenager. Because of her sharp teeth, local tabloids mockingly referred to her as Canine Dion. Adult journalists mocked her despite the fact that she was only a child. Even while her voice was garnering attention, the headlines were dominated by her physical attractiveness. She had had enough by the time she turned 18. She discreetly removed herself, had dental work done, wore braces and caps, and returned, prepared to be judged by her abilities rather than her appearance. She had never felt at home in a classroom. "I loathed school. It wasn't only about the bullying," she once said with great simplicity. She had a strong sense of not fitting. In her upbringing was the true source of her education. Her instructors were her own siblings. She learned best at the dinner table. People, not books or chalkboards, taught her how to sing, perform, and survive. The Dion family persevered through times of financial hardship. Literally, they banded together. Each of the 14 kids took part. They went around Quebec performing at various locations under the name Dion's family. Singing in her parents' piano bar, Celine made her debut at the tender age of 5. Nobody treated her as an object of interest. She played a supporting role. She had written and recorded a demo of her first song by the time she was 12 years old. The 1973 wedding of her brother Michel was her debut performance in front of an audience. Survival was at stake, not leisure. Revenue was boosted by the shows. Plus, they offered Celine a platform. Unlike the schoolyard, where she felt insignificant, she felt secure in her family's basement. Neither she nor her buddies would hang around after school. Had she returned home immediately and immerse herself in music alongside her siblings, she found solace in their basement. The atmosphere was electric, with the sound of instruments, laughter, and singing filling the air. The basement was the place when Celine discovered her voice. At that spot, she channeled suffering into impact. Her music was her weapon in the struggle against the cruel world. A family brought their young daughter to a nearby studio in June 1980. Only enough money had been saved to record a demo. Not at all. Her mother and siblings helped her compose a handful of short songs. Nothing too complicated. Most children still had not mastered the art of bicycling by that point in time. However, music occupied this girl's thoughts. She sung into a studio mic that day while her family looked on, and she unwittingly started a route that, in due time, would encompass hundreds of millions. The humble beginnings in a kitchen would eventually reverberate in arenas all around the globe. It wasn't only her mother Tears who believed in her. Everything was riding on it for her. She financed only so a guy called Renee Angel could get the demo sent to their family home. Jeanette Reno, the most famous singer from Quebec, was managed by him, thus she went with him. Meanwhile, Celine admired her. The family could only afford to send one tape, though, given that, should it fall into the wrong hands or be discarded, the whole thing would come to an end. With 14 children, the Dons were quite the brood. They had a baker for a father. I wasn't only taking a chance. It was their whole possession. Moreover, in some way glue did the trick. Listen, Renee said. A song wasn't all he heard. Something completely new had just come into his ears. In retrospect, he considered it the finest voice he had ever heard. According to some, he shed tears. Reportedly, he remained motionless, taken aback. His subsequent actions stunned everyone. She was able to launch her profession thanks to the $100,000 he put up as a mortgage on his property. A 12-year-old girl who has never been on stage before. His friends had informed him that he thought he was crazy. Yet, it was irrelevant to him. In his heart, he kept believing. Her star was on the rise in Quebec by 1983. She had won Eurovision. By 1988, she had hardly begun. The initial time the meeting was not a dress rehearsal. Even without a proper microphone, Renee welcomed the Dion family. She readily took up the pencil he offered her and proceeded to pretend you're singing to a full stadium. She got to her feet, standing there, pen poised, and singing Senate Crève, as if her whole existence were at stake. Renee was utterly taken aback by what he was saying. He later said that she sang as if the room were filled to capacity. The truth was that there were barely any relatives and a manager involved. However, her future was decided at that time. Celine recorded 9 albums in French between the ages of 13 and 18. The majority of students were preoccupied with upcoming tests and dances. After hit, Celine would record. When she was 15 years old, she made French history by becoming the pioneering Canadian artist to be honored with a gold record in that country. D'amour ou de tir was the tune. Selene Dion secretly had something to hide when she was only 18 years old. Renee Angel, her 44-year-old manager, had captured her heart. There was more than just an age difference that caused rumors to circulate. While she and her mother slept, she would look at the picture of him she had stashed beneath her pillow. She felt physically ill from her obsession. In her imagination, his character, a lack of sleep, plagued her. The impossibility was obvious to her. Both of Renee's marriages have ended in divorce. He could have been her father if he'd lived, but she still couldn't resist. The stronger the feelings, the more taboo it felt. Prior to her mother's discovery, no one in her family was aware. Celine's #1 fan, Celine Dion, had always been there for her. Her career was kicked off by her. She had faith spoken by her. She was shocked and dismayed to learn that her adolescent daughter had been romantically involved with a man who was almost 30 years older than her. Renee was more than simply older. He began involvement with Celine when she was 12 years old. According to TZ, it posed a threat, and without proper supervision, her expectation that the crush would be short-lived led her to confront Celine. Celine, however, refused to budge and instead maintained her position. "We live in a free country. I can love whoever I want," she informed her mother. She was fighting for more than just her emotions. She was battling for the right to be herself, and nobody could stop her. When she turned 19 the next year, everything shifted. The thing that was once a secret crush blossomed into a genuine romance. There was complete secrecy around their first formal date. Celine and Renee's romance went unspoken for a long time. Only those in the inner circle were informed. They exercised caution. They anticipated criticism, but that their love was genuine, and they were patient. They remained undetected. Even now, he served as both her manager and her mentor. However, their connection continued to deepen in the shadows. Celine, during the height of her early stardom, made a surprising choice. For 18 months, no one paid attention to her. A plot was hatched, not a scandal. She got a new hairstyle, capped her teeth, and became an English fluent speaker. She had changed her mind about being a kid star. A global presence was her goal. There was a lull in 1986. She had undergone a remarkable metamorphosis by the time she came back. She remained the same vocally, but her appearance had transformed, and everyone took note. Then her life was forever altered by that fateful night. More than 600 million people watched Selene Dion win the Eurovision Song Contest on April 30, 1988. Her young age was only 21. The energy in the audience was palpable. No one cared that she was singing for Switzerland and not Canada. With 137 votes to 136, Switzerland narrowly defeated the United Kingdom in the end. After that close victory, she became an overnight sensation all over Europe. Celine, a timid adolescent from Quebec, became a continental star after her song. Ne Pas Paso became the last French-language entry to win the contest. Until 1990, her greatest leap had been in 1989. Everything shifted when she released Unison, her debut album in English. Sales exceeded 1. In the US, it sold 2 million copies and achieved platinum status. It received 7 platinum certifications. In Canada, the smash Where Does My Heart Beat Now peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. According to the artist, that was practically unprecedented for an artist whose native language was French. It seems effortless to Celine, though. She was named Juno Award-winning album and female vocalist for the record. Her accomplishments extended beyond Canada. Quickly, she was making her way into the international pop scene. On Jay Leno's Tonight show the same year, she made her big American television debut. Leno gazed after her live performance directly into the lens and foretold that her professional life would be nothing short of spectacular. That was a pivotal moment. Never before had anyone made such a bold statement about a promising young French-Canadian vocalist. Nevertheless, it proved to be spot on. Her entire life was changed by that one TV moment. All throughout the USA, the Wall Street Journal, which typically covers business and finance, referred to her as a once-in-a-generation voice 2 years later. No one, not even her teammates, expected such high praise from such a solemn source. People were starting to stop comparing her to pop stars. They were classifying her among the greats. Her powerful, unadulterated voice had become her signature sound, and at last, she was receiving the praise she so richly deserved from critics. After that, her 24th birthday, the night of March 30, 1992, came, taking a step onto the performing Beauty and the Beast alongside Pebo Bryson on the Academy Awards stage. The song had recently taken home 2 Grammys and an Oscar. She performed it live in front of an audience of A-list Hollywood stars, and her rendition stole the show. That next evening, she released her second English-language music collection. The excitement was immediate. She returned to The Tonight Show the very next day. Around that point, consensus had set in. The prophecy made by Jay Leno had materialized. Celine Dion's live wedding on December 17, 1994, stunned the nation. Nationally broadcast, as she made her way down the aisle at Montreal's Notre Dame Basilica, millions of Canadians watched on television. Wearing a 7-pound tiara and a silk gown with a 20-foot train, she was just 26 years old. The chapel was filled to capacity with more than 500 visitors, adorned with over 10,000 blooming flowers. Since it was the initial public acknowledgement of Celine and Renee Angel's connection, it took on an even more dramatic quality. Their courtship had remained under wraps until then, despite the fact that he was 26 years her senior. But life following their nuptials was far from smooth sailing. Despite Celine's meteoric rise to fame as a musician, she suffered through years of infertility. She began fertility treatments in her early 30s and continued for nearly 10 years. When Renee was diagnosed with in 1999, things got much more difficult. Throat cancer. His sperm count was already low when physicians froze them before starting treatment. It became nearly hard to conceive naturally. They did in vitro fertilization 7 times. Everyone had to a mental and physical burden. A miscarriage was also experienced by them. Even though Celine had a world-renowned voice, she kept these traumatic events a secret. It was as if a silent miracle had finally transpired when she gave birth. She traveled to New York in May of 2000 to undergo 2 surgeries at a prestigious reproductive facility. The interval between the procedures was barely for days. After that, her medical experts recommended that she take 10 days off to recover. She put her career on hold entirely to pursue her dream of becoming a mother. Both the media and her own aspirations put immense pressure on her, but she persisted nevertheless. The couple went on to have a son in Florida on January 25, 2001. He was given the name Renee Charles, weighing 6 pounds 8 He arrived 3 weeks early. In the morning, that was Selene's age 33. The entire globe rejoiced alongside her. There had been years of disappointment and misery, but now everything seemed right. She focused on her new family for 3 whole years before returning to the limelight. A pleasant conclusion wasn't all it was. The power of optimism and perseverance was on full display. However, that was not the last chapter. When Celine gave an interview in 2001, she revealed something that few suspected. Another embryo was produced during the IVF process that led to Renee Charles's conception, and it had not thawed. She couldn't bear to let it sit unused since she felt an intense attachment to it. She claimed the embryo was frozen for over 9 years. After that, it was a factor in the birth of her twin boys in 2010. It was her work and science that propelled her too. She had the opportunity to start a family again when her mother handed it to her. Celine had already achieved superstar status in the music industry prior to all of this. Her 1996 album, Falling Into You, was released by her. The record was a game changer. The product generated more than global sales of 32 million copies. Roughly 12 million were sold in the US. 2 more were added by the UK. 1 million, it was more than that. Album of the Year honors were bestowed upon it in year 1997. Neither the Beatles nor Beck's albums were able to top it. Each of the 4 countries, France, Germany, Canada, and Australia, each 1 million units sold. When I think about You, It Reminds Me of You and It's All Coming Back to Me Now are still popular today. Even after 25 years, those tracks each made millions of dollars on personal ones. Following that, No One Could Escape was played. The 1997 soundtrack single, My Heart Will Go On from the film Titanic was her most successful single to that point. It's tangible. Copies had sold 18 million by 1998. It topped the charts in more than 20 nations. For 17 weeks, it was the most played song on Europe's Hot 100 chart. Together, the UK, France, and Germany accounted for more than 4.6 million hard copies. With 117 million listeners in just 1 month, it set a new record for radio play in the US. Hundreds of millions of people still watch it online every year. Every passing generation finds out about it. A single song or album wasn't enough to achieve this kind of success. After 2 albums by Celine sold over 30 million copies, she made history as the first female artist to do so. Involuntary Falling Into You hit 32 million. Following it with 31 million was 1997's Let's Talk About Love, that has never been done by a female artist before. Neither were these hits that didn't last. You might find them on charts all across the several months. Thanks to hits like My Heart Will Go On, they reached heights nobody had ever imagined. Her 2003 actions altered Las Vegas' trajectory. A $95 million arena was constructed specifically for her by Caesar's Palace. The Coliseum could accommodate 4,300 spectators. Vegas had previously been considered the last destination for fading stars. However, Celine disproved that theory. She made about $385 million from over 3 million tickets sold in 5 years. She became an inspiration to numerous A-listers after her triumph. Among them include Lady Gaga, Britney Spears, and Elton John. The concept of contemporary Vegas residencies was born from her. Renee Angel and Selene Dion's love tale was one of a kind. Their private struggle, however, extended far beyond the limelight, music, and stardom. Intensely difficult 17 years. In April 1998, Renee received her initial diagnosis of throat cancer. The disease returned despite his heroic fight through surgery and treatment, which the doctors hailed as a miraculous recovery. Another tumor showed up in December 2013. Even after removal, the damage had been done. No longer could Renee eat. A feeding tube was necessary for him. Taking care of him in between performances and rehearsals was something Celine frequently did on her own. That being said, an active role in her profession remained for Renee. His inability to communicate did not stop him from shaping her concerts in Las Vegas and tours around the world. Celine abandoned all efforts every time his cancer reappeared. Her concerts in Las Vegas and an upcoming Asian tour were both cancelled in August 2014. The ones that were simple choices. The price tag is in the millions. However, she was always bold. As far as she was concerned, her husband needed her undivided attention while he recovered. Celine became one of the best-selling musicians in the world at the young age of 32. In the early 2000s, shocked onlookers by stepping away from the limelight entirely. She took a 2-year hiatus to have a family and assist Renee in her recovery. It was a heartfelt, unusual move in the music industry. The choice was profitable. At the age of 42, Celine gave birth to twins in October 2010. Nelson and Eddie were their names. However, getting there was no picnic. The woman had 6 cycles of in vitro fertilization. It was her first miscarriage. The embryos that gave birth to the twins were frozen several years ago. Approximately 5 pounds per infant was born. The long-standing producer of Celine, Eddie Marn, was honored with one, and Nelson Mandela with the other. It seemed miraculous. Amidst reins, despite his deteriorating condition, he continued to work as a partner with Celine. Their collaboration on her stint in Sin City was seamless. Renee was 73 years old when she died in January 2016. Towards the end, Celine was cooking for him by herself. He may have resigned as her manager, but he remained her rock. In her professional life, true to her word, she remained at his side right up until the finish. A previously unseen aspect of Celine Dion's life was unveiled in the 2024 documentary, I Am Celine Dion. During one disturbing scene, cameras caught her having a seizure as she was being recorded, the way her physique became rigid. For about 8 minutes, she wailed in agony. She froze and muttered nothing. As they worked quickly to maintain her consciousness, her medical team administered 2 doses of an emergency nasal spray. Celine persuaded the director to keep filming even if he wanted to stop. She wished others to understand the reality of dealing with her sickness. Global astonishment ensued upon Celine's diagnosis. Stiff person syndrome (SPS) was her diagnosis, rare, affecting just 1 to 2 persons per million. In which emotional states, physical contact, or loud noises set off violent spasms in the muscles. It has the potential to injure the spine, cause torso twisting, and even paralysis. It's incurable. Benzodiazepines and botulinum toxin injections are common treatments. Years of perplexing symptoms preceded Celine's diagnosis. It wasn't until the epidemic forced her to pause and prioritize her health that doctors discovered it. Prior to it, she had kept her sickness a secret. That is, not even when she continued to perform despite experiencing discomfort. Even when her voice refused to cooperate. She performed in up to 70 shows in a year. She kept up appearances, saw specialists, and tried different treatments behind the scenes. Her heart nearly broke as she pretended everything was okay. However, she was cautious about disappointing her admirers. Doctors didn't confirm her ailment until August 2022. The truth was revealed to her admirers in December. Keaton, it a secret no longer weighed me down. Her boys are now actively involved in her care. The ages of Nelson and Eddie are a mere 14, but Celine has taught them to recognize when something is seriously wrong. She can be easily manipulated by them. Somewhere in the house, they have learned to push a panic button. When assistance is needed, they are alert. Each evening drills are part of their routine. If it's taking her too long to get ready for bed, they even check on her. They take care of it with the kind of love that no youngster should have to deal with such a heavy burden. Celine can still feel Renee's presence, even if he has left. By the year 2020, asserted that she frequently feels his presence. She confides in him when times get tough. Whenever she is sick, she knows he is by her side. He served as her manager, best friend, and spouse. She will always be bound to that bond. The globe over Celine's strength has been acknowledged. She was presented with the Legion of Decoration, France's highest civilian decoration, on May 22, 2008. It was presented to her in the Elysee Palace by President Nicolas Sarkozy. It is seldom given to non-citizens. She was the most popular French-language artist of all time at the time, having sold over 12 million copies of her album Dieu, which was released in French. In 2023, she was ranked as the 10th best Canadian musician of all time by Rolling Stone. Among the greats, she was second only to Joni Mitchell and the legendary Neil Young. No other Canadian female pop artist achieved a higher position. She has had an impact that has persisted through every trend and transition in the industry, as seen by the acclaim that came decades after her first hit songs. Renee Charles, her firstborn son, is establishing his own legacy. He has achieved success in two distinct realms by the age of 24. He dropped a hip-hop extended play in 2021. His deep run in the 2025 World Series of Poker main event stunned the poker world in July. He advanced to the fifth day with 2 wins. Out of more than 9,700 competitors, 80 billion chips, he proved that poker prowess is inherited by earning approximately $70,000. Even his father, Renee, had played at a high level. Renee Charles is now carrying on the family name while playing music and cards.